The Irrawaddy River crosses through Burma from north to south. Over 2,000 kilometers long, it originates in the Tibetan Himalayas and runs out into a large delta in the Indian Ocean. Fed by many affluents, it is the main watercourse of Burma and the country's main axis of communication. It has always served as a trade route with China and India. Its vast central valley constitutes historical Burma, first inhabited by the Payus to the north and the Mons to the south, before the arrival of the Burmese in the 9th century. It crosses through historical cities like Mandalay and Bagan, while Rangoon is located on one of the delta's branches. On the riverbank in the center of the country, Bagan, formerly called Pagan, is a vast Buddhist archaeological site that is nearly 50 kilometers squared. Today, it is occupied by villages and hamlets, often built near the ruins of the first Burmese Empire's capital in the 11th to 13th century. The site is located in an earthquake zone, and it has suffered many earthquakes that caused serious damage. 2,834 constructions are numbered on the site, many of which are in ruin. The Mons and Puis seem to have established themselves in the region around the mid-7th century AD. A few rare remains of the era have survived, sometimes hidden in the later Burmese monuments. The greatest period of architectural work took place between the 11th and 14th centuries. This period, which marks the hegemony of Burmese power in the region, turned the plain of Bagan into the greatest Buddhist archaeological site in Asia. The historical events which upset the 13th century coincide with the decline of the city and with the capital's transfer to Ava in the northeast. However, Bagan was never completely abandoned, for it remained a pilgrimage site. On the site, there are two major types of monuments. Circular in shape, the stupa is a full construction. It is both a symbolic representation of the Buddha and a monument commemorating his death, with a relic buried in its center. And there are the temples of varying dimensions and shapes. There are the linear temples, which often have a porch and vestibule before the sanctuary. There are also square temples. This enabled images of the Buddha to be displayed on the four facades and allowed for circumambulation, as done around the stupas. There are cross-shaped temples with four wings, a porch, and a vestibule. The decorations are numerous and varied, with statues, sculptures, and frescoes. The temples are topped with finely worked towers, which make them visible from afar. The most famous cross-shaped temple is undoubtedly the Ananda. Built by King Kyanzita in 1091, it was originally devoted to the infinite wisdom of Buddha. The construction of this temple signals the king's adoption of Buddhism, which he then promoted throughout Burma. Having been severely damaged in the earthquake of July 8, 1975, it is currently being restored. The rooftop is made up of 6 successive terraces, topped by a very fine Indian-style sanctuary tower, covered in gold and peaking at 55 meters. All the elements of the rooftop are very elaborate. Legend has it that the king was inspired by the description of Indian temples that a monk architect from India presented him with, which explains the Indian architectural motifs on the Ananda. After the monk completed building the temple, it is said that the king, in order to preserve the temple's unique character, had him killed, to ensure that he would never build a similar structure. A variation of the legend said that the architect was buried alive to serve as a guardian spirit. The temple has a square shape with 4 portals before it. Then, 4 corridors lead to the central core, where 4 niches each contain a standing statue of the Buddha, facing the 4 cardinal points. Facing west is Gautama Buddha, with hands outstretched in a gesture of intrepidness. Facing south is Kassapa Buddha. In fact, there are thousands of Buddhas, for immortality is impossible in Buddhism, which believes in renewal and reincarnation. So there are 1,000 Buddhas from ancient times, 1,000 from present time, and 1,000 from future time, each living about 5,000 years. The 4 Buddhas displayed here are those of the present, with Gautama as the 4th. Guardians watch over each corridor. Konagamana, the healing Buddha, faces east. Kakusanda, facing north, is the first of the 4 Buddhas of the present. His hands are joined in the preaching position. The 4 vaulted corridors are loaded with thousands of existing Buddhas. 1,500 statues in low reliefs represent the 80 life episodes of the Enlightened One. The palace also contains some frescoes, a rarity. Washed out by time, they too recount the life of the Buddha from his birth to his death. Through all of its unique iconographic representations, the temple enabled the doctrine to be established and transmitted to the people in captivating visuals. The Ananda Temple had a truly pedagogical purpose on the wishes of the converted sovereign. In this way, the king had a means to unite Burma under a common religion and a common flag. As for the great temple of Tayok Pi, it was built 150 years later between 1256 and 1287. This temple had 2 floors, and like most of the other temples, it was originally surrounded by many wooden structures. However, it is one of the few temples that has preserved its decor, created with great finesse. Indeed, the majority of brick temples have lost their white plasterings and their stucco ornaments. The window and door framings exhibit particularly refined work, with large sculpted billows decked with flowers and animals. The figures which deck the facade are enough of a rarity to be mentioned. Inside, the four Buddhas in the present-day temple respect their original positions, oriented towards the four cardinal points. The frescoes on the walls and ceiling retrace the life of the Enlightened One. King Naratihapate, who had begun the temple's construction around 1260, did not want to complete his work, for he saw in a dream that his kingdom would fall when the temple was completed. His monk architect reproached him and continued building the edifice. But history proved the king right, for he was the 11th and last sovereign of the First Burmese Kingdom. Indeed, in 1277, faced with the threat of the Mongols who had just invaded southern China on the country's border, he launched a great offensive attack on the Chinese province of Yunnan. But he was defeated, and in 1283 the Mongols invaded Burma. The king then fled to the southern part of the country, offering his submission. This is how he became known as the king who fled before the Chinese. He was then assassinated by one of his sons, who took up the struggle against the invaders. In vain, for he was also beaten by the Chinese. The country then fell into a slow decline, which reached an end in the 16th century with the rise of the Second Burmese Kingdom. The Thatbinyu is the tallest monument on the site, peaking at nearly 65 meters. Built in 1144, it served as a model for most of the great temples of Bagan. Here, the whitewashed stucco decorations have not been erased by time. The temple is devoted to the Tathagata, one of the epithets given to the omniscient Buddha, he who knows deeply and sees far. Small gilded statues are held in the four corridors. That is where the monks lived. The four corridors leading to the four current Buddhas have lost all their decorations and have been repainted white. The particularity of this temple is the asymmetry of its eastern facade. Its longer corridor leads to an altar where two guardian statues stand watch. It displays a small statue of the Buddha that is highly worshipped. Following the line of tourists, we arrive at another temple built by the same king. There are strong resemblances among all these temples which were built in the same era. This temple, too, has a square design, and its central pillar, rather slender, is hollowed out by four niches containing the four statues of the Buddha. King Alongsitu, the builder of the temple, had himself carried here, for he was very sick. His son used this as an opportunity to suffocate him to death in 1167. Nathlong Khyong, literally the sanctuary that shelters spirits, is the only Hindu temple on the site. It is devoted to Vishnu. It is also one of the oldest temples. According to historians, it was built at the end of the first millennium. It had been built for Indians residing in Burma, mainly merchants and Brahmins working for the local nobles. The temple is rather small, with a square design and a steep roof. Originally, the temple contained 7 statues of Vishnu. Hinduism is founded on a trinity which incarnates the cycle of the universe, with Brahma as the creator, Vishnu as the protector, and Shiva as the destroyer. The temple's central pillar is decorated with 4 great statues of Vishnu made of stuccoed brick. These are the only elements of the temple that have been restored. The Patotamya Temple is located in the southern part of the city, on an axis that links it with the preceding temple and which ends at the Ananda. No inscription allows it to be precisely dated, but it was likely built in the second half of the 11th century. The sanctuary contains a brick statue of great dimensions, coated and painted. This temple contains one of the most accomplished painted works of Bagan. Though some of the paintings have become blackened or detached from the walls at certain areas, they are impressive by the richness of the colors used and by the balance of the compositions. This ensemble illustrates the episodes of the Buddha's life. To decipher it, you must walk around the corridors twice. Two smaller statues represent the same event as the bigger statue, namely enlightenment, with the Buddha touching the earth with his right hand. The inside of this temple truly exhibits a great sense of mysticism. Mahabodhi Temple is a smaller-scale reproduction of an existing temple in India. The design plans of the monument were brought to Bagan by a monk in the 12th century. King Hittilominno decided to create a replica in brick stucco in 1218. Restored after the earthquake of 1975, it contains a magnificent golden statue of the Buddha in the earth witness position. Beyond its pyramidal tower atop a square base, the temple is nearly unique among the temples of Bagan for its vast and ornate exterior decorations. Its numerous niches contain over 450 images of the Buddha, not only on the tower, but also on the outside walls of its base. Besides the pagoda, the symbols of the Buddha's 7 sites of meditation are displayed within the perimeter of the temple, as is done in India. While sitting under a tree, he put an end to his ascetic lifestyle, considering it vain. He then accepted to eat in order to better meditate. The time of his meditation is narrated as taking place over 7 weeks. According to various legendary tales, Mara, the demon of death and the passions, frightened by the power the Buddha would wield against him, tried to break his meditation by launching hordes of frightening demons on him. But in vain. The often represented gesture of the earth witness position shows the Buddha asking the earth divinity to witness his enlightenment, and with this gesture, he simply denied the demon spirits without fighting them, in total serenity. Thus, he could pursue his meditation and attain enlightenment. The temple displays all of these events in the Buddha's path to enlightenment, upon which he attained nirvana but decided to remain on earth in order to help humans in their quest for knowledge. Located on a hill overlooking the banks of the Irrawaddy, the Bupaya, or the Gourd Pagoda, is one of the most famous Burmese stupas. It attracts a lot of visitors. Small in size, it was built in the 3rd century AD, though its style seems to indicate it was built around the year 1000. In any case, it is one of the site's oldest monuments. Beside it, a small temple was built for worshippers. Further away, Mingalazedi Pagoda is the most recent of all the Buddhist monuments in Bagan. It was completed in 1284, 3 years before the kingdom fell to the Mongols. It is a brick stupa resting on 3 square terraces. The stupa itself is in the shape of a bell, topped by a cone decked with precious stones. The little stupas standing at the 4 corners are decorated with bricks glazed in green and yellow. Combined with the original brick coloring, it gives the stupas a beautiful tint. Beautiful plaques of terracotta representing the Jataka, the tales which narrate the former lives of the Buddha, are found on the 3 terraces. Within the temple surroundings, there were numerous monasteries which have since fallen into ruin. Hitilominlo Temple was built between 1211 and 1218 by the eponymous king who had the replica of the Indian temple built, which depicted the Buddha's meditation and enlightenment. It is 46 meters high with 2 brick stories covered in very elaborate stucco. Damaged by the earthquake of July 8, 1975, it has since been restored. Its facade is decorated with sandstone tiles glazed in green and yellow, which reflect the sunlight. This technique was rare at the time, for very high temperatures are required to vitrify glaze. The adjustment of the bricks and the design of the era required the mastery of architectural techniques. Original paintings, ink inscriptions, and the horoscopes of certain figures adorn the ceilings of the vaulted corridors devoted to circumambulation. Inside, 4 Buddhas stand against the central pillar, facing traditionally enough the 4 cardinal points. The vaulted corridor on the ground floor contains 22 niches that hold small statues. On the upper floor sit 4 other statues. Having been well restored, it is one of the most visited temples in Bagan. The Payathonzu, literally the group of the 3 Buddhas, is a special temple. Indeed, it is made up of 3 temples linked together by 2 narrow passages. Built approximately around 1200 AD, this temple was never completed, for the exterior stucco, which is lacking today, perhaps never existed. Furthermore, the sikaras, the sanctuary towers, were added in recent times. The temples have the same shape, with a square design and a projecting portico on one side. Inside, the walls, the pilasters, and the vaulted ceilings of the East Temple, and a part of the Central Temple, are covered in paintings. Those of the West Temple are entirely unadorned. The paintings include floral motifs in which we can see mythical monsters, animals, birds, and intertwined human forms. There are also life scenes of the 28 Buddhas of the past and life scenes of the final Gautama Buddha. The incompletion and the architecture of this triple temple remains a mystery. Among all the edifices in Bagan, the Nataung Monastery is one of the last to have been built on the site in the 18th century. It is made of wood, the usual construction material for monasteries, unlike the temples which were made of brick. Because of its recent history, it is the only monastery that has been undamaged by time. Its buildings are raised atop wooden platforms on stilts, which offer ventilation as well as protection against snakes and flooding. The tent-shaped multi-tiered sloping roof topped with arrows displays extraordinary creativity and design. The towers and bell towers adorned with flames are remarkable. They stand around a single great mast with roofs that decrease in size. In fact, the complex contains 2 monasteries and numerous pavilions, rest houses, and auxiliary buildings. Recently, a big part of the site was carefully restored. Funds came from abroad, while the archaeology department took on the responsibility of maintenance works by training workers to the ancestral techniques used in wooden constructions. Today, the monastery is a wonderful example of craftsmanship, both past and present. The restored bird-shaped and flame-shaped creatures which decorate the rooftops and the sculptures and decorations on the railing reflect an attempt to re-establish and maintain authenticity, and thus exhibit the country's former glory. The building of the main monastery, oriented east-west, measures 40 meters by 35 meters. Most of its major decorative elements date back to the pre-colonial period. Today, Nhat Tong Monastery is both a museum that recreates the past and an active monastery, though the monks come few and far between. A beautiful, peaceful haven, serene and calm. Khe Min Ga is a group of pagodas of various styles built between the 11th and 12th centuries. A few dozen are dispersed among the vegetation. The small stupas with their bell-shaped roofs contain the ashes of important monks, while the biggest stupas contain classical square temples. Accessed through a porch, they call upon believers to kneel before the Buddha and to move clockwise in order to walk past the four Buddhas of the present by following the corridors that depict the life stories of the Buddha. Many statues have been stolen from the site, for it was believed that they contained treasures. Here, the restoration work was basic, and the former gildings have disappeared. The Alopii Pagoda is a Buddhist temple that is still active today. It was built around the year 1113. Its roof is topped with a great stupa that is flanked by four small ones at the four corners. The lions, as well as the entire rooftop, were recently re-gilded, and the effect is spectacular. Inside, the walls are entirely covered by decorations. In the deambulatory, some 650 images of the Buddha, seated in the lotus position while teaching the different sutras, are on display for all to see. Traditionally, four Buddhas are oriented towards the four cardinal points. This one here is in the teaching pose. This theme repeats itself continuously on the sanctuary's walls, suggesting the omnipresence of the Buddha, especially of the teaching Buddha. During the construction era of the First Burmese Empire, King Kyanzita, who had the Ananda built, had had to flee and hide from his brother, for he had fallen in love with the latter's fiancée. His first wife, Abiyadanar, nonetheless brought him food in secret, for he could not show himself without risking assassination. He was aided by fate when Kyanzita became the third king of Burma. He had this pagoda built here in honor of his loyal first wife. The arrows that top the buildings are copies of those seen in Sri Lanka. This small, very well-proportioned temple contains a great statue of the Buddha as well as frescoes that represent with greater finery his 550 commandments. Among the some 2,800 temples that still stand in Bagan, the temple of Queen Amma, built in the 11th century. Built on a square base, the superstructure is made up of 3 terraces linked by stairways, with 4 abrupt terraces above which a curvilinear arrow rises. Her younger sister Nyima had the adjacent stupa built. This pagoda has an unusual style. Its 3 square terraces and bell-shaped dome are not different from those seen in other pagodas. But above, there's an architectural gem made unique by its concentric circles. The temple of Queen Amma, however, is a typical temple, with entry points on all 4 sides and the main entrance on the east side. Inside, a statue of the Buddha sits on a stone base, inside a hollowed arched niche. Lokanada, literally the joy of the world, is among the most visited temples of Bagan. This stupa was built in 1059 during the reign of King Anawrahta, the first king of the First Burmese Empire. The entirely gilded stupa reveals Sri Lankan influences, and it contains a replica offered by Sri Lankan monks of a tooth relic of the Buddha. The temple is still used as a place of worship. In 2003, a new crown decked with jewels was placed atop its peak. Between temple visits, it is possible to purchase manufactured articles and food products from the many vendors, an opportunity for a welcome break. The Sulamani is another great Buddhist temple built in 1183. Made of brick and a few stone elements, it served as a model for the Hitolominlo temple. Its central block measures 50 meters long, and its 2 floors are topped with terraces that display crenellated parapets. On the ground floor, a vaulted corridor winds around the central pillar, where the statues of the 4 Buddhas stand. The original frescoes have disappeared over time. They were replaced in the 19th century, but unfortunately these new frescoes are not very interesting, artistically speaking. Two big stairways lead to the upper floor, where the central block has only one hollowed niche on the east side to hold the statue. The Pyata Dar is one of the last great temples built in Bagan. It was built in the first half of the 13th century. The structure is symmetrical, with a porch flanked by 2 smaller entrances on either side. This temple reveals the evolution in the architectural skills of Bagan's builders, with its use of wide corridors and large vaulted rooms. Creating such high inner spaces allowed for great statues to be placed standing. Other, more classical statues are divided up among the cardinal points. A staircase leads to the Great Terrace, at the center of which stands a small structure in the shape of a temple. Above, the Sikara is topped with a golden arrow. From the terrace, visitors can enjoy a beautiful view of the surrounding plains of Bagan, with its innumerable temples. Built in 1255, this small one-story temple, built in a later style, owes its name to its builder, Queen Tambula, wife of King Uzana. The Tambula is a square structure with porches on all 4 sides. Because of its later style, the interior is well lit, which makes it easier to see the mural paintings and statues, which exhibit distinct Chinese influences. All of the characters have Chinese eyes and hair, and the use of yellow is predominant. At the time, the rich Burmese Empire stretched to China in the province adjacent to the Yunnan. Chinese merchants flocked to Burma. A Chinese community most likely financed the construction of this holy site. Just prior to the Mongol invasion and the fall of the First Burmese Empire. The Shwezigon Pagoda is one of the gems of Bagan. This great stupa was inspired by the Lokananda, built during the same period in 1059. It also has a bell shape. It was gilded in the 16th century. It sits atop 3 terraces decorated with terracotta plaques that represent the 550 life events of the Buddha. The pagoda is said to contain a jawbone and a tooth of the Buddha that the king had obtained at the end of his military campaign against the kingdom of Dali in the present-day Yunnan region of China. King Anawrahta, the first king of the First Burmese Empire, began construction of the pagoda. Then his son Kyanzita, turned king, completed the work with dressed stone from the famous quarries in Tuin Tong. It is said that the young king himself would supervise the arrival of the stones to ensure that they originated from the right quarry. All around stand numerous small temples and pagodas, as well as 4 buildings containing the images of Buddhism. The decorative works made of terracotta depict rare finesse. The 4 buildings are located at the 4 cardinal points, and like the temple, they contain 4 statues of the 4 Buddhas of present time. In the East House, the statue of Konagamana. In the West House, the statue of Gautama. In the North House, the statue of Kakusanda, and in the South House, the statue of Kassapa. All these statues of the Buddha were cast in a bronze alloy and heavily gilded. Every day, a morning offering of steamed rice and fruit is left at the pagoda. As we can see, Bagan truly holds a treasure of Burmese art from the 11th to the 14th centuries. This important period of architectural activity marked Burma's hegemony in the region and its foundation as the first Buddhist kingdom. With the Mongol invasions, the historical events which upset the 13th century coincide with the city's decline and the transfer of the capital city. Nonetheless, Bagan was never entirely abandoned, for it remained a pilgrimage site, though it was seriously damaged by numerous earthquakes. The slow restorations have not yet brought the former capital back to its former glory. A lot of time and money is needed for the gold gildings to shine once again on the 2,834 constructions that stand on this exceptional site.